And yeah, it was back then, it was really manual. There were no systems, no internet, no email, forget automation. But yeah, that was my first, you could say media supply chain, or you could say ecosystem or operation, but that was my my first sort of glimpse at it. And then sort of going along, I can give you a bit of a sort of a potted history, but jump in.
Go for it.
Yeah, but going along, I kind of had these different opportunities that came along, and I got this opportunity to go and work in bookings. And one of my clients, or my clients were record companies, so companies like EMI, New Records, Chrysalis Records. And working with Chrysalis really brought along my next opportunity, because the Chrysalis group were moving their work in-house. And it was really, really good timing for me, because Double Vision had been taken over by somebody, and it was just the right time to move. And I moved over to Chrysalis. And then when I got into Chrysalis, they were, or RTV that became Chrysalis, they had a contract with MTV Europe. And so that was my sort of first glimpse of broadcast, because they used to broadcast their channel back then. And it was back in the day when MTV used to just play music videos.
Okay.
But they had a transmission area with what's a beta cart. They had a studio and a gallery, and I was basically the account manager. And one of my main jobs was every week their sort of new music videos would be released, and we had to get them into the system, and then we used to have to put a title graphic on them and a artist graphic on them, and then they went into transmission. But you kind of, again, learning about this ecosystem, or broadcast ecosystem. And then MTV decided to move their operation in-house. I don't know if anybody's been up to Camden, but where Viacom is, which was the old TVEM building, they were moving their operation in-house. And then at that point, the company I was working for, Chrysalis, won the Turner Broadcasting account. And this was at the time when all of the American companies were really sort of bringing their brands internationally, and everybody, it was just sort of at the beginning of pay TV, and everybody was launching their products globally. And yeah, I was the account manager for Turner, and I was involved with Turner for a total of 17 years, actually. I was a supplier for them for 7 years, and then I actually got a job working for them for the broadcaster. And sort of over that time, I did so many different things. I think I say that I was either in or managed something like 25 different departments, sort of systems, program operations, localization, presentation, scheduling. I had a few that were a bit left field. I used to look after a creative services team for a bit, a programming team, a production team, but it's fantastic. And I just kind of learned, I got opportunity to learn so much about the overall industry, I guess. And one of the things that I had a lot of fun doing, and I'm really proud of, is I built a broadcast centre. We built a broadcast centre for Turner Broadcasting. It was at a point where the industry, we were going through a sort of a technical change. So we were moving from tape to file, everything was moving to file based. And so we had to make a technology and investment. We could either do that ourselves, bring it in-house, or potentially work with a third-party supplier. And I was really, really passionate about this area. And so I wanted to do it in-house. And it kind of it took 3 years, this project, from sort of conception to delivery. And the first year, it was me, there was a consultant engineer I was working with, and a finance person building a business case, and figuring out what tech we would need, and how much space we'd need, and how many people we'd need, and all that kind of stuff. And then I had to kind of sell it to the company. And it was a significant investment for the company. I think it was probably the biggest investment that they'd made in EMEA since Turner had been established. And then we got the sign off, and then we had to deliver it. And so, you know, had to build a team. So there was literally me, and had to build a team. It was 45 people in the end. It's obviously running 24/7. We had to build all the systems, figure out all the processes, digitize the library, move the play out. But it was great. You know, we had to take up. I remember taking car parking spaces because we needed new UPS. We had to bring in a diesel generator. I think we had to bring in a new substation, all stuff I didn't know anything about. There was 80 racks of equipment that needed building. But yeah, it was fantastic accomplishment. And towards the end, I was actually pregnant, and so then I had a baby. So after that project delivered, I had
a new challenge.
Yeah, different. I didn't actually take that much time off when I think back, and I did actually have meetings when I was on maternity leave. So I don't necessarily recommend that, but anyway, that's what happened. And then once I got back from maternity, over a bit of time, then an opportunity came up at Discovery, and they'd approached me. They were looking for somebody to head up their operation. But actually the first time, I went through a few interviews, but I didn't get the job, and it went to an internal candidate. And then I can't remember how long it was after. It was definitely a couple of years, but then the role came back up again, and they came back to me. And yeah, I got the job at that point, and I think it was just the right time. You know, I've been at Turner itself for 10 years, and I was like, I probably need to do something different. So yeah, I moved across to Discovery, and that was so interesting starting at Discovery, because having been at Turner for so long, I pretty much knew every process. I knew everybody knew me. I was really well established. So it was a bit of a risk moving when I think about it. I didn't think about it at the time, but when I look back, I think about it. And I was going in cold into Discovery, and didn't know anything about their operations. So I spent a lot of time meeting the team. There was like over 200 people in the team, but I went around and met everybody, so I could really try and get an understanding of the operation. And I remember I'd started in April, and we were actually going off to NAB, and I sat with one of my team on the plane. I think the flight's about 11 hours, and I literally spent the whole time asking her questions. At one point, even the captain came down and said, "Are you ladies okay?" Because I was like, "How does this work? And what about this?" But I call them ecosystems, but what we do is really complex. It's really large, and I wanted to understand how it all fitted together, and where the challenges were. So I found that sort of talking to the people is sort of one of the best ways for me to learn. And I was at Discovery for 5 years, and while I was there, we launched 90 channels. We solved some really big issues with some operational broadcast reliability. We delivered some really creative live events. But then I was made redundant, and that was really, really tough at the time, because for the first time I'd found that I needed to go out and find a job, whereas I'd sort of approached for jobs, pretty much all these opportunities had come up. And so then I really had to learn sort of how to find a job, and that was interesting. But in time I was really, really lucky, and my current role at the BBC came up, where I head up global ops, and that sort of brings us up to date. And it's great. We've got lots of complexity and lots of challenges, and something to get my teeth into. I really enjoy that. So that's sort of a pitted or potted history of my working life, or my career.
Well, I think it's definitely, your career history has kind of demonstrated to us how adaptable you are, and actually kind of how positive you are about change. So I know some people get very comfortable doing what they do, but it sounds like even though you may have been at companies for 10 years, 7 years, you endeavor to find lots of different things to do, and big projects come your way because you have that kind of can-do attitude, I guess. You mentioned you felt it was a risk to move to Discovery from Turner. That is something that I get, again, as women in industry, it's well known that women are less, you might not agree with this, but more hasty about taking risks than perhaps male counterparts are. Would you be able to share why you thought going to Discovery was a risk?
Well, because you've got to win everybody over. You've got to build your credibility. It was a big department. It was, like I say, over 200 people. So it's a lot of responsibility. So I felt, where I came from, a company that knew everything about me. So it was, having to prove myself. But then there's other factors, isn't there? I felt that it was the right time. I'd kind of done so much at Turner, and I felt that it was just sort of the time to, push myself out of my comfort zone, and try something different.
Great. You mentioned also that you obviously when you started at Discovery, you met 200 people. You mentioned also when you were introducing the broadcast centre and all these new ecosystems, managing different teams. Obviously, part of being a leader is also bringing people, I dread to say it, on the journey with you. So how do you, when you start a new role or start a new project, how do you enforce the clear leadership that you hope for, and making sure that people are motivated to kind of do what you need them to do?
Yeah, I mean, talking about motivation specifically, I think it's a really interesting area, because you don't just do one thing and then everybody's we're all motivated.
You've won everyone over.
So I think you have to do a real range of different things. But also, I really like talking to people in the team. I mean, when I came into the BBC, I met everybody in the department. I want to find out what's important to everybody, and also what can I do to help. But yeah, some other things that work, I think, or could work for motivating, which I've sort of learnt over the years, is make sure everybody is clear on the vision, objectives, and or goals of the company, but also the department. And I found company objectives often need translating for teams in like tech and ops teams. So to make them relevant. Find out what everybody wants. Staff survey, got in results, and those can help guide you. And then try and work to deliver what you can. I mean, there's a lot you can do to make a difference. There's some things that aren't necessarily in your gift, but I do think there's lots of things that you can do. I think many people are looking for opportunities to develop. So this can be promotions, or it can be just having an interesting challenge to work on. I think volunteering and social responsibility activities can motivate some. Formal training, money can be a motivator, and for me that's about maybe helping the company deliver a deal, making some savings. I mean, it can also mean personal remuneration, but it's not just that. And then I think spending some time with colleagues socially. I've met so many great people over the years, and some of my best friends are people that I work with much earlier along. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that have worked, but definitely not just one thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely insightful that you might be, when you first start the role, meeting everyone, but it's not a one-stop opportunity. Like, it needs to be something that's continued to work and continue, like any relationship we have, whether it be personal or professional. You can't just kind of do it once and think, well, that's me, that's it, done. So I think that's good advice for people who are either currently leaders or hoping to be leaders. Do you have any further advice or nuggets of wisdom for future leaders in broadcast or operations or media?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say hello to Sarah Chase, because I just saw her come on and just
Hi, Gabby. I feel like this is going to be like a "This Is Your Life" moment. I'm going to bring out someone with a red book in a minute. I'm not. I know we've had some people join whilst we've been chatting. If anyone does have any questions that they'd like to ask Gabby, or just a shout out, because you seem to know everyone, do put it in the chat, and I can weave the questions in. But yeah, we were talking about just advice in general for future leaders or people aspiring to be leaders.
Yeah, so you know, you build your experience and your accomplishments, you know, and sometimes you have to take a sideways move to gain valuable experience. And then the other thing I would say is be willing to take on more, and don't expect anything in return. I mean, I talk about all these opportunities, but it doesn't mean it was a new job, a new pay rise. It was just taking on more work, but it allowed me to get more experience. You know, have a go, put yourself forward, you know, get some visibility. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you can learn from them. Network. This was something that I had to learn all about when I was made redundant. So, you know, figure out who the hiring manager is, if it's a role that you want, and see if you can get a coffee with them. And you know, you want to be the person that they want to hire when the job comes up.
I think, sorry to interrupt you, with the whole invite people for coffee, I think it's really good to hear that from someone like you, because it's advice I feel we hear often, but I kind of sometimes think people think, oh, but that's not for me to do. If someone genuinely wanted to speak to you about a role and put a coffee in with you, would you take them up on that?
I did it recently, actually. I got somebody approach me, and I did it recently, and I'm always getting messages on LinkedIn, and I really try and get back to everybody on there. So yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
That's just, it's good to hear, because it's I'm enjoying the many angles of Paul's iPhone on the camera here. It's just good to reiterate that, I think, because sometimes we hear it like network's important, asking people for coffees is important, but I think sometimes there's some reluctance because people don't want to be a hindrance, but actually I think people like to talk about themselves and share their experience. I certainly do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I found everybody, like people I approached when I was looking for a job, they were really supportive, actually, and really helpful. So yeah, definitely. Other bits and pieces, I would say, you know, be someone that people want to work with, you know, share your knowledge and ask questions, get some training. I was really fortunate. I went on some really good technical training over the years. I also attended Turners and Discovery's leadership programs. So, you know, if you can get any of those kind of opportunities, but there's tons of training out there now, you know, with LinkedIn Learning, and, you know, I'm sure all the organizations here have different training, you know, because when I started out, there was no training. And so, you know, definitely take advantage of as much as that as you can. Work on your LinkedIn profile, your CV, go for interviews. As I was sort of working and going along, if I'd get approached for a job, I'd sometimes just go for the interview, just for the you know, experience, you know, because you've got to sell yourself, haven't you? And if you don't get the job, you know, don't give up, and, you know, believe in yourself. That's what I would say. So those are my tips.
I think that's very good.
Probably others, but those are
very good message to end with there on the believe in yourself. Obviously, a big ethos of Rise is mentoring and that networking and asking others for advice and support. Do you, you don't have to be specific, but have you had those supporters, cheerleaders, mentors along your working and your personal journey? Yeah,
definitely. So it could end up being an award show if I started to name everybody who supported me. But, you know, there's been so many people over the years, and, you know, it's not just managers, it's direct reports, it's peers, it's you know, it's just 360, and actually, you know, my mum, my dad, you know, they've been massive support to me over my working life. So yeah, those were the people I could think about. But it's also, you know, it's working on projects or working together, because you're sharing ideas and you're getting different perspectives. And you learn in those scenarios. Well, I learn in those scenarios where I see different people approach things like, oh, I hadn't thought of it from that angle or whatever. And that's how you learn. And I'm always keen to nick a great idea or use it. Anything that can help me, I'll take the help.
That's great. I think it's really good to be open-minded. I'm gonna ask you about being, I guess, a woman in industry. Do you think there is enough being done to attract women to kind of broadcast operations technology roles? I mean, we obviously both work at BBC. I think our operations team is actually very well represented for it kind of with women. Is enough being done elsewhere in your experience to attract women in these roles and keep them in these roles as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, there's been more focus on it more recently, and especially with organisations like Rise, which I think is fantastic. I can think back to different points in my career where I've been in big meetings and I have been the only woman at the meeting. So I think continuing to raise awareness of our space can only help. I mean, like I said, when I first started, I had no idea what facilities was. I didn't know operations existed, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So I think we just got to continue to raise awareness, because it's such fun. This industry is just fantastic. I've had such a blast in this industry over the years. I have worked with so many brilliant, amazing people. I have traveled the world. I have had some fabulous projects and challenges. So yeah, I think we just need to continue to raise awareness of what we do.
I think what's really clear from chatting to you is that you're kind of passionate about challenges. Challenge is not a dirty word in your vocabulary. It's very much challenge is a good thing and you're passionate about it. I mean, you obviously you were talking about broadcast centres, which I personally think is a very pressurised situation. How do you handle yourself in pressurised situations? And it's going back to that motivation of teams, but you obviously respond really well to challenges. So what drives you?
I love a high pressure live broadcast, or sort of the responsibility of broadcast, and it's all about the reliability and the nines and all the rest of it. And I just really I enjoy that. And I think it's just in an operations role, a big part of what we do is finding solutions and delivering. And for me, somehow it's more fun when there's some jeopardy involved.
You need a few nail-biting moments in your work.
I'm not saying it's not stressful, because it is stressful, and it can be really gutting if there's an issue. I've definitely had my low moments. I'm like, oh no. But it's really complex what we do, and I love it actually when I see the teams, but the tech and ops teams working together to solve problems. And I really think it's the time when I've seen tech and ops at their best. And I think it's a real sense of pride and shared success. When we pull something off or when we solve a problem. So that's sort of the bits that I enjoy.
Yeah, I feel ops is very collaborative. It's coming up with ideas, because sometimes you'll get things proposed to you where you're like, we've never done that before, but we're not going to say no. We're going to work out how we're going to achieve this. And that's when you have to rely on your network. It's all things you've said, like, have you built your network up? Because they're going to be the people that help you.
Yeah.
I think key to also developing a career is feedback and receiving feedback and also giving feedback. Is that something you enjoy doing?
Well, I've got a story on feedback. The first time I got some feedback was when I was still at Turner, actually, and it was brutal. It was actually brutal, and I burst into tears because it was a really big shock. I didn't really know what I was doing, or I wasn't aware of it. And so if you ever get anything like that, give yourself a bit of time to process. But once you've got through that, then it's great. It's just something you've got to work on.
Yeah.
And now I love it. You know, it's so good at highlighting blind spots. And I think as you go along, you really get to know your weaknesses, and you become more confident in talking about your weaknesses. And then you can surround yourself with people that are you know, could complement your strengths, which is great. And I do provide feedback. You know, there's a couple of my direct reports on here that I can see, and they will know that, you know, at appraisal time, I do really take the time to gather 360 feedback. And actually, one of my team, not on here, has said to me, it's a bit like getting this is your life book at the end of the year. But it's been so useful to me. So I just personally think it's worth the effort. So yeah, I'm a big fan of feedback.
Well, I think it goes back to what we said earlier about motivating people. You know, if people aren't being given direct guidance or suggestions on how they can improve or where they might need to work on, they're going to be unmotivated. And, you know, people do turn up and do their job, but it's going to be far more engaging if you're like, right, I'm going to drive towards this. I think something else that engages people is knowing what's coming up in the future. And I mean, we'd all love a crystal ball to tell us what to be investing in and how the future is going to look. But could I ask for your predictions on what might be happening in the industry over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, flexible working's got to be continuing. We managed to keep going through a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, anyone, if they want to put on their emojis, if you're wearing pajama bottoms or slippers or anything like that, feel free to do a thumbs up on the on your computer.
But you know, it's obviously the pandemic. I think it's radically changed the way that we were working, and I think there's been so many positives. You know, just, you know, I don't have to do the commute every day, and but also, you know, some roles that I didn't actually think would ever be possible to work from home. You know, we have been able to enable things like editing. You know, some of our editors are now working remotely. So I think that, you know, that's set to continue. So I think that's one of my predictions. I think if you look at stuff from a tech and ops lens, I mean, a lot of us, different companies, are on their journey to the cloud. We're all at different stages of moving bits of our operation to the cloud. So I think that, you know, that's just going to continue. I think AI and machine learning's still got a way to go. But I think there's got to be some opportunities there. I don't think we've necessarily found all the right use cases yet, but I think that's something for the future. And then from a consumer perspective, I mean, there's so many choices. You know, I go back to I started at the beginning of when pay TV was just starting. You know, we've had VOD, and now we've got direct to consumer. And I find it fascinating to see how the business model is going to continue to change, and you know, obviously that's going to continue over the next few years as well. So those would be my predictions.
Okay, I won't hold you to them, don't worry. In 3 years' time, I won't come and find you and be like, well, Gabby, do you remember on the 21st of September?
We just iterate as we go.
I think Gabby and I could quite happily chat for another hour, but to spare you all of that, if anyone has any questions, either feel free to come off mute and ask Gabby, or put them in the chat and I'll happily read them out. Alternative, Gabby, do you have any questions for anyone in the group?
I have a question for Gabby.
Excellent.
Okay, so when you're talking about training and that kind of thing, so if you could pick one skill that you learned through training, like specifically through a course or something like that, as opposed to on-the-job training, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I think some of my leadership training really helped me, because the thing is, I started managing teams with no training, and I wasn't great at it at the beginning. Really was rubbish. And so I think you know, because you kind of get, when you sort of get promoted, or when I got promoted, it was because, you know, I was really good at what I was doing, and so then you go into a sort of a management role, and it's not about what you're doing, it's about leading and managing the teams. And so yeah, it's a whole different skill. So I wish I'd had that earlier in my career, because I think that would have helped me. So yeah, but I do think companies are much better at that now than when I was starting out. Like I say, there was no HR department. There was no training at all when I first started.
Feels a bit like a rogue state.
Because I'm so old.
But I also think, you know, you've been quite honest there and said you didn't think you were a particularly good leader to begin with. I think sometimes, yes, it's good to have training for leadership, but I think sometimes it's just done by practice as well.
Yeah.
Like you can learn all the theory, but until you're actually physically doing it, sometimes it's a skill that you need to practice.
Yeah, we did this thing actually in one of my roles where we were supporting sort of supervisors or new managers, and you know, they wanted some experience in managing, and we actually did this. We worked with the HR person, and we developed this program, and we did role play, and the team said to me, you know, will you do the role play? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do the role play, thinking, oh my god, I gotta do the role play. And yeah, I had to be the difficult employee who had a lot of time off sick, and you know, somebody was practicing having those conversations with me, which actually I really enjoyed, because I really threw in a lot of theatre. You know, I've had loads of those scenarios where you're having really difficult conversations with people. And yeah, so you know, so you can practice, you know. So if I'd had kind of that stuff earlier, that would have helped me. Hope that helps.
So a career in amateur dramatics awaits you, Gabby.
Yeah, I stormed out of this meeting, and they like, when we were doing this role play, and they were like, oh yeah, you know, deserved an Emmy.
Anyone else have any questions for Gabby?
Got one, if that's all right. Hello. Obviously we all know, well, I think a lot of us know what, you know, leadership traits that we should all be sort of aiming for, but for you personally, from the leaders you've had, what's been the trait that you've most valued from good leaders? What's worked for you the best, I suppose?
I like people to be open, honest, tell me what they want. You know, I just want to deliver what's required. So I really like, you know, straight talking. Yeah, help me with the politics sometimes. You know, sometimes it's sort of dealing with the politics of an organisation on how to get things done. That can help. Yeah, I think those are the sort of things.
You do that well with us, so it's obviously passed on.
Any other questions for Gabby today?
I have a question. Hi, Gabby. So I was just thinking about, so Gabby and I worked together for a while, and what I loved was just the kind of the joy that comes with you in the office. And, you know, there's this kind of like automatic, everybody's uplifted, and there's just, you know, just a general joy around the team. And that's very much how I like to think myself as well, just, you know, enjoying work, having fun. But Gabby, I sometimes struggle with people taking me seriously. So I kind of have that kind of happy buoyancy, very people focused. But when it comes to making decisions and being quite straight down the line, I struggle with that kind of seriousness. So I'm just wondering how your advice on creating the balance, and how you might have, I don't know, come across that in your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think certain situations, you know, you can't. I have to get myself in a mode if I've got to deliver some, I don't know, some information. I don't know. So yeah, I will put myself into a different mode in how I'm going to deliver something. You know, so react. You know, so you can be that. You know, but you can kind of put yourself in that mode. And I think the other thing is, I guess it depends what it is. You know, have you got credibility in the subject area? You know, so do you know what you're talking about? And I you know, like I said, that's why one of my tips is, you know, build your experience, build your accomplishments, because, you know, you've got credibility then. So look at how you deliver whatever information it is, because you might need different gears. And then yeah, you know, have you got credibility with who you're delivering to? Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I don't know if they help.
Yeah, thank you. I like the I've just written down usual gears. I quite like that. Thank you.
Great. Probably got time for one more question if anyone has one. No. I have a very ill-prepared interviewer. I don't have a question to finish with, Gabby. Yeah, so that's a bit of an anticlimax, but thank you for your time. I appreciate you're very busy, so it's been very helpful to hear from you, and also to learn a bit more about your career history and the fantastic advice you've given us. Just a reminder to everyone else that obviously there are more sessions coming up with Rise, and to sign up on the socials or LinkedIn. I think there's a newsletter that comes around as well, so make sure to sign up to those. And just thank you all for your attendance, and thank you to Gabby.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.